Hey, what is going on, guys? We are back here with another true gaming topic, and today the agenda is open world games. Now, ever since the beginning of the early 2000s, open world games have had the gaming industry in a chokehold. Without a doubt. Ever since the early release of the GTA games, especially from the first release of GTA 3, San Andreas, that really popularized the genre in a sense. And ever since then, open world games are all over gaming. It's pretty much the standard game style if you're going to be making a new type of game. It's open world game, to be expected. Back in those days, open world games brought something truly special, and there was something unique for the time. And the exploration and you being able to do whatever the hell that you wanted at any time was something that really made those type of games special. Now today, I want to tackle and look at the issues that we still face today, and the various problems and solutions that we can come up to try and solve or talk or deal with the entire open world issue. Now, while open world games are great, there are a number of issues and lots of things that come about because of this. So on today's video, we're going to take a deep dive into the various issues that are associated with open world games and the possible solutions that can be taken to improve them as a whole. Let's get right into the video. Now, firstly, the various problems that are plagued by open world games, and I think this is probably the biggest issue that we are facing generally in the entire open world genre, and this is honestly faced by a number of other things as well. Oversaturation. There are simply too many open world games that are being released on a regular basis, on an annual basis, and a huge amount of game developers are all choosing to make a similar type of game. This unfortunately brings the value of the entire genre down because it essentially has lost its charm that it had before when it was still new, and the uniqueness of the entire genre is effectively gone because it's so common to find these type of games. They're no longer special in any sense, which unfortunately devalues the entire experience. And because of that, you could be playing an open world game that is actually pretty decent and has been well designed, but the issue is because there's so many other open world games, there's so much competition that when you finally get to that open world game, you end up experiencing much less utility, much less satisfaction from playing that game. There's just too much. There's just too much for us to be able to enjoy, and because of that, it becomes a less enjoyable experience overall. Let's be absolutely honest, guys. Now, there are a number of game companies that are particularly very big culprits of taking advantage or overusing the open world genre style. The companies that immediately come to mind are companies such as Ubisoft. Ubisoft cater and create a large amount of different types of games that span from medieval titles to first-person and third-person shooters, but every single one of their games have the same and similar formula, the same exact open world formula. Waypoint, a narrative, cutscenes, and outposts. So whichever Ubisoft game that you play, they're going to feel very similar and exactly the same. Whether you're playing an Assassin's Creed game, whether you're playing Far Cry, whether you're playing Ghost Recon, they are all unfortunately very similar. And this is a really big issue that we're facing here. And that brings me over to the other issue that we're facing. There's simply truly a lack of innovation. We've essentially been playing these same open world games that have been released perhaps 15 years ago. There isn't a huge amount of difference in the gameplay formula from if we take something such as GTA 5 or Far Cry 6. If we compare those two titles, now granted, there have been huge gulfs in classes and strides that have been made in terms of graphics, in terms of gameplay, combat, and all these other factors. But the style and the entire system that has been used has stayed exactly the same. It stayed stagnant. The only thing that I could say in terms of the system and the open world system that has changed, back in the day, there weren't any waypoints or GPS lines that would follow you and tell you exactly where you needed to go. Back then, there would just be a mark on the map, and then you'd have to figure it out for yourself how to get to that destination. I'd say other than that, there's been a very small amount of innovation that has essentially happened in this entire genre. Now, I will grant, I have not played yet Elden Ring, but something interesting that they brought out is that they reduced the amount of things that you knew about in terms of the map to encourage you to go out into the world and have a great time. And just the little things like that can be ways in which to revitalize the entire open world experience. Now, if we consider the third issue that we're facing over here in terms of the issues facing open world games, I'd have to say, unfortunately, a big reason of it is unfortunately greed. And open world games have become essentially the standard in games. If you're playing an RPG, or if you're playing a story-based game, the standard formula that will be followed is the open world genre. And essentially developers and everybody involved in the production of video games have been well acquainted with this formula, so it's a lot easier to pump out something because it works. If it ain't broke, why fix it? That's a simple and easy argument for it. So unfortunately, I say one of the reasons is unfortunately greed, a lack of heart, and the other part of this issue is unfortunately a lot of companies unfortunately focus on quantity over quality. And by this I mean, instead of making an interesting open world map or an interesting region that is interesting and very intricate, the idea and marketing strategy is to create a very large open world that is very, very huge and will take forever and a very long time for you to explore. But unfortunately, the issue that you will come across is that it's unfortunately huge, as wide as the ocean, but unfortunately only as deep as a puddle. This is a typical saying that's associated with open world games, particularly considering the games produced and created by Ubisoft. And this is extremely unfortunate because it unfortunately makes exploration not interesting or exciting, because you look at your map, their waypoints, you know exactly what you're going to find. There may be a question mark that's there, but it's never going to be a quest or something particularly interesting. Information is always available and made to you readily. And unfortunately, exploration isn't rewarding or exciting at all, because the story is always going to push you somewhere. The side quest is always going to push you somewhere. And even if you do find an interesting or cool place on your own, you may not even be able to explore that area because you have not done the necessary requirements in that side quest that takes you to that particular place. So you ended up even wasting your time exploring because you can't even go to that place because you have not yet unlocked it. But as I've said before, let me reiterate my point. Quantity over quality. A lot of gaming companies essentially give us a very huge and very large, expansive maps. And unfortunately, because of that, they aren't able to put a huge amount of depth into them, make them very interesting, have a large amount of interesting characters, because the map is just simply too large. You aren't able to fill enough content or enough quality content in these areas. And unfortunately, the entire quality of the game declines because they have to make a huge amount of side content sheerly because of the ridiculous size of the map. This is an issue that I faced largely in games such as Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I'd heard great things about that game, but when I finally sank my teeth into it, I was sorely and very highly disappointed because the map looked absolutely breathtakingly gorgeous. It looked beautiful. The visuals were amazing. But unfortunately, because it's so big, many assets had to be reused from one era to another. You would have essentially, I'm not sure what those things are called, but the architectural style that the Greeks use, and their huge buildings, they essentially are copied and pasted into different places all around the map. The visuals look great, but unfortunately, because the map is too large, a large amount of things have to be not only repeated, but executed and copied. And even when you go and reach these special areas, there's nothing ever really interesting to find. And that's unfortunately a great issue that we're facing over here in the entire open world genre. Now guys, this is what I definitely do have to mention. If you're somebody who's particularly new to open world games and haven't really yourself played a large amount of them, these issues and such things will be a lot less impactful to you. But as someone who definitely enjoys the gaming genre and plays a large amount of these games, innovation and uniqueness is definitely something that is necessary. And I think this is an important thing that we talk about, because a lot of gamers who play these type of games in the first place are people who generally play and buy AAA games on a regular basis. So for us to continue to support these type of companies, we're going to need something a little bit extra, a little extra push, perhaps a very strong narrative or something else, or an interesting traversal system. Now, if you know, before I made a traversal video talking about the unfortunate thing that moving from point A to point B in a video game has become quite dry and boring, but it essentially stems from this original issue that in open world games there hasn't been enough innovation or anything interesting enough to essentially change the entire formula, to the point that I'm saying, okay, if you're not going to change anything, particularly in the open world formula, at least to make moving from point A to point B exciting or fun. So that's essentially was kind of a solution, but I wasn't exactly focusing on open world games and the issues that it faces when I was making that video. But today I am. Now understand this, I'm the type of guy who, if I'm going to complain about something, it is absolutely ridiculous and unfair for me to not come up with at least a few worthwhile solutions that can be implemented today or relatively soon. So here are my various solutions in which this, entire issue of open world games can be innovated and improved upon. Now, my first solution to this problem of innovating in terms of open world games, perhaps you might not even be able to consider it exactly a solution, but I would say encourage the innovation and execution of hub world open world games. Now, this is slightly different, as it's not fully expansive and fully explorable as it is in other open world games. Hub worlds are essentially open world games that are fragmented to a point. It's not easy for you to easily explore one place and another place. But I like hub worlds because you essentially get the best of both worlds. You get the best of linear games, of them being very well tailored and interesting, and everywhere you look is beautiful and interesting, and you also get the exploration and the benefits of being able to have that freedom to go anywhere you want pretty much majority of the time. But you see, the benefit of hub open world is that they keep you engaged all the time, and they're able to control and cater the experience to keep you much more engaged at a much higher level. Why do I say this? Let's consider games such as God of War. In God of War, in the beginning you would pretty much consider it an open world. You would pretty much consider it a linear title. But as soon as you get past essentially the prologue and get full access to Midgard, you are able to explore the little area in which the entire tower and Bifrost is explored to you. And whenever you feel like it, you can get on your little boat and go from island to island, explore, gain loot, and do a number of side quests that are available to you at the time. So you essentially get that feeling of the freedom of open world games, but in a controlled way. But they do it in a very interesting way because, one, it's fragmented. So you are never going to be ever overwhelmed, in a sense at all, because the game periodically unlocks more and more pieces of the entire open world to you at different times throughout the game as you continue to complete side quests, as you continue to complete the main story. So you never feel overwhelmed. You are able to completely fully explore areas, and it's also a nice thing because it gives you a reason to come back to some areas that you've already explored. So it gives you that freedom, and it makes you feel smart for remembering like, I now have this ability. I now have the ability to come back and pick up this chest, come back and beat this little mini boss, come back and get this cool ability that's been waiting for me because I've made the proper progress in the open world game. So it's little things like that that can innovate on the entire genre and make it interesting. That's the type of innovation that we need in the open world genre. And these hub worlds are really, really great. One of the best things about them is how special that they are. They're very unique, and it essentially feels like you're playing a little puzzle piece. It's fragmented, it's very cool, and there's lots of things to do. As I said, you're mixing the best of both worlds of linear and open world games. Now, let's get on over to the other solution that I have for this. Now, for my second solution to improve and innovate in terms of open world games is not even exactly an innovation, but instead to go back to its roots and take a further step back in order to improve the overall experience. My solution is to make open world games smaller. Now, the example that immediately comes to mind is Deus Ex Mankind Divided. Now, you could say this is a little bit of a hub world, and this is, also the strength of hub worlds, because you're able to pack more interesting things and details into that smaller space. But it doesn't even need to be a hub world. It can just be a smaller open world game, and there are various positives to making it smaller, and the immediate one that comes to mind is depth and intricacy. Because a world is smaller, one, you can make it more beautiful. One, you can stylize it in a much more interesting way. Three, you'll be able to add things that are much more unique, and you guarantee that players will definitely eventually run into these cool things that you have created. And really, one of the most important things that makes things memorable is depth. People don't want to play an open world game that is huge but not deep at all. People rather play in a smaller open world, but it's very deep. I'd rather play in a world that has very interesting and deep characters at pretty much every single corner that interest me and excites me, that make me want to come back. If I think of the various Ubisoft games that I've played in the many years that have passed, I have no personal connection to the places or worlds that I played in. I've played Far Cry 3, I've played Assassin's Creed, pretty much all of the Ezio collection, all the original Assassin's Creed, and a large amount of the new ones as well. And I feel no personal attraction to them because there's nothing to draw me or want me to come back to those places. There's no familiarity to those places. And unfortunately, because there isn't anything deep about them, I'm not interested at all. And another benefit of making a much smaller open world is not only is it going to be much more deep, intricate, and a more memorable place, it's very much better and cooler for you to execute quests and make changes in the world according to the things that you do in the story. If you know that your player is going to go to a shop very regularly and keep making trips back to that shop as he continues and progresses with the story, it's a very cool and interesting way for you to do things, such as you can change things. You can have perhaps you made a bad decision in the story. Perhaps you ended up killing or hurting somebody, or perhaps you did a decision that's going to hurt the community. Because the game knows that you're going to keep coming back to that store to perhaps buy weapons, buy potions, buy whatever you need to buy from that shop, they can do changes and make it different and make you actually feel the consequences of your actions, not just from the reactions of the people that you interact with, but reactions and ripples in the actual world that you're playing. And there's much more control that you have because of using this style, and the world that you're in can be much more impactful and much more immersive if you prefer and change into using this type of style. And my third and final solution in order to try and innovate and improve on open world games is reduce the amount of information that you give to the player. Now, I say this because it's a very interesting and pivotal way of encouraging exploration, encouraging organic exploration. There are a number of games that have implemented this. Unfortunately, I haven't played either of them, Elden Ring and Breath of the Wild. You're essentially given a quest, you're told or seen, or you find out what you have to do, and then you just go and you play the game and you have fun. And this type of thing is very nice. It's nice for a few titles to be able to innovate and change on the general open world style and do something a little bit different. And one of the things that I really like about the Uncharted series is that while at first I found it frustrating, I really like the fact that you don't get a map. Something about you being able to find out and figure out for yourself where you need to go is very, very cool and interesting on its own. While there can be complaints made that that Uncharted itself is much more of a roller coaster and doesn't allow for much freedom, finding out where you need to go and figuring it out and doing the multiple puzzles that come alongside that is a pivotal part of the fun on its own. So that's a very cool aspect of the game, in my opinion. Now, the issue that can be faced, while this is a great solution for games such as Elden Ring, in the Souls series, those type of games where pretty much the focus of those games are gameplay, level design, customization, RPG mechanics, and the action itself. Implementing such a strategy in a narrative-driven experience is going to be very, very difficult, and that's something that we do need to acknowledge. Not giving the player information or knowing them, or them knowing exactly where to go, or having at least an idea of where to go, can be very frustrating, and that can be absolutely a problem. Now, I do kind of have a solution to this, because I think that the way it's executed now probably isn't the best way to go. Because having a waypoint and being told to do, you essentially switch your brain off, unfortunately. You don't have to think about where you're going. You essentially, whether you're playing a medieval or a modern game, you switch on the GPS, you hold X to keep riding your horse, and it's just gonna ride you all the way there automatically. This game essentially plays itself. Or you're following a GPS and you're driving all the way there. Now, I want to focus a little bit on perhaps the medieval games, because it makes it a little bit difficult, and it'll lose a bit of immersion if this waypoint system is ditched, because in real life we have GPS systems that allow us to take us from point A to point B. Now, if we consider games such as Deus Ex Mankind Divided and Kingdom Come Deliverance, they use an interesting way of telling you where to go. Now, there are times when, of course, where there's a waypoint and you're told where to go, and you do kind of have to figure out where you need to go. But I think a good style that those two games implemented is them essentially giving you an idea. You talk to a character and he tells you, okay, this is where you need to go, and they'll give you decent directions of you to follow this road, go on your horse or walk, and you will get to your eventual destination. If you choose to switch off the waypoint in Deus Ex Mankind Divided, because it's a relatively smaller world, if you follow and listen to those directions to the T, you will be able to find the location of where you need to go. And in Kingdom Come Deliverance, they will give you perhaps a surface area. They will give you a huge expansive area of, this is where you need to look at this entire huge expansive area and find this character, or find this piece of information, or find this scoundrel. And unless you want to spend hours scouring for this individual or whatever you're looking for, you have to listen to what the characters tell you to look, follow their directions, and if you follow it to a T and try your best, you'll be able to find what you need to find. So I think this is a really good and interesting way to use the reduction of information being given to the player to make the game more exciting and more immersive, in order to encourage exploration and make the game interesting. Now, I understand that it can be frustrating for some, but I think it's a decent solution to the problem that we have over here. Now, by bringing this up, I'll kind of be going back to a little bit of a point of before, but another benefit of having smaller open world games is, I did mention that there are many other benefits, but one of the ones that I want to point out is from Deus Ex Mankind Divided. In that game, there is a quest where you essentially have to solve a murder mystery. Now, because of the size of the open world game and the way that it was executed, when you find out about this quest, it feels absolutely very organic. You essentially just carrying on, because you go up and down on the streets, and you essentially end up knowing and internalizing the area that you're in. So when you come back and you see a crime scene and you see things going on, you're like, oh, what is going on over here? What is going on over here? You see a point of interest on your map and you're like, oh, what's going on over here? And it's essentially a choice that you make if you want to get involved or not. You can pretty much step up, talk to the police officers, talk to the multiple witnesses, and on your own accord and by your own choice, you are able to start the murder mystery and get started with this quest, which has a pretty interesting twist if you do get over to the end and keep pushing on. Quite some eerie stuff, but definitely one of the coolest quests that I've played in a while. And the way that it was executed, and me finding it organically, because I go up and down the street so much, and it's much easier to see a change when you've become well acquainted and familiarized with a certain area that's given to you in an open world game. And this is where size truly does matter, but on the opposite spectrum of that. So yeah, guys, those are essentially my thoughts on this entire thing, man. Open world games definitely are in dire need of some innovation, and hopefully some of these solutions can be helpful. Let's have a discussion down here in the comments. Tag whoever you want. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share the video to your friends and whoever is interested in this type of content. Let's have a discussion down there, man, because definitely I won't lie, as I've gotten older, bro, I definitely enjoy linear games and hub world games a whole lot more because they just seem and feel much more engaging because everywhere I look it's something interesting. If I go somewhere, I know it was well curated and a lot of work was put into that area. So everywhere I look, it's a fun time, it's a good time. And I definitely know that whatever I do is going to be interesting, and wherever I go, there's depth to it. It's not shallow, because that's one of the huge issues that I faced with AC Odyssey. It was dry as hell because nothing was interesting. While it was beautiful, that visual fidelity and that beauty wears off very, very quickly. Visuals aren't what makes you fall in love with the game or an experience. It's about the characters that you come across, the multiple quests that you have to deal with, and the amount of challenges that you have to overcome as a player. Thank you guys for watching my video, man. Have a great day, man.